Welcome back, everyone, to Podcast Theory Productions. My name is Jesse, and today we have with us Mr. Paul Ingles. Paul, thank you for being with us, sir.
Very good to be with you, Jesse. Thanks for your interest.
So you were nominated for your trailer for the short film Noontime Legends, correct?
Well, it's actually a feature documentary. It's a full 90-minute documentary, but I don't think they were doing a documentary category this time around, so they accepted our trailer, which, the trailer is a piece of magic in and of itself. So,
okay, so can you explain what's going on with your character and what's going on in the movie?
Well, it's a documentary, so this is the third of three films that I decided that I wanted to make once I did about 5 years of acting classes here in Albuquerque. And so the first film was a short film, a dramatic film, and the second one was a full-length feature dramatic film about the passing of my father called A Soldier's Passage. And, when they say that you want to get into kind of any artistic endeavor, they say, do what you know and do what you care about. And so the first film was really about my experience as middle-aged, I'll say middle-aged, 50-something-year-old guy in between relationships. That was the weeds in our own backyards. And then the second one was, about my father passing and how our family was dealing with it. So that was important to me. But the other thing that was really important to me throughout all that time and through the last 15, 17 years has been this group of guys that I play basketball with at the University of New Mexico. I used to work at UNM at the public radio station there. And so we've been playing ball 2 or 3 times a week at noontime. And it is such an important part of my life. It's a reach back to my high school basketball playing days, but it's also a way to connect with people socially. It's a great workshop for peacemaking and for inner work. And I wanted to try to bring all that to the fore in trying to do a documentary on it, reflecting not only my own experience with playing with these guys, but interviewing them and obviously filming the games. So we set aside 2 full days of filming these sessions, and I took my camera in and filmed myself at a bunch of other sessions and crafted this documentary that I think does a pretty good job of representing a special gathering that has a lot of depth and a little bit more to it than people would think if they were just walking past it in the gym.
Okay. So was that the gym at UNM or was that at the pit?
It's the Johnson Center gym, the recreational facility at the University of New Mexico.
Okay.
So for years and years and years, I've been playing with them for 17 years. Some of these guys have been playing together, some staff members have been playing together for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Back when they were students in the 70s, or maybe when they first joined the faculty or something like that. So this sort of kind of an unorganized game was being played for maybe the first almost 20 years or 15 years. But then, like I said, when I started playing, they actually set aside a couple of courts for us to play. And we kind of organized a little bit. We didn't make permanent teams, but we had a system for picking teams, and we wore mesh jerseys, and the teams were always made up of the same group of maybe 25 or 30 guys, and sometimes gals, that would show up and play at noontime.
That's amazing. I was watching that movie. I really like the way you had that set up, the way you were in. Were you also narrating it too?
Yeah, in a way. There was a lot of things that I started wanting to do with the film, but basically I included myself in the interviews. So I did all interviews with about, 15, 20 of the guys, but I kind of interviewed myself too, so that I could put my own take on it in there, because I knew the guys would cover a lot of the same emotional terrain and funny stories and things like that. But if there was anything not or left unsaid, then I had a chance to be able to say it myself as just one of the people who were playing with everybody else.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So And just, you know, we were talking before we started the podcast. You also made a movie called The Weeds in Our Backyard, which I got a kick out of this. It said 87.3% of this actually happened, and I love that. It's the way you kind of list everything out.
The disclaimer at the beginning of the film, yeah. Well, it seems like it's a little fantastical if you watch it, and you can watch it on YouTube. And by the way, if you want to see those films or any of the trailers that I've done, paulingles.com, it's listed there on my personal website, that PAULINGLES.com. But that story tells the story of me pulling an immense number of weeds out of my back alley. All of that happened. And the fact that I was going to kind of distract myself by listening to my iPod while doing my iPod failed. So I was just stuck with my own thoughts through that whole ordeal. And then given the opportunity to just let thoughts come up, all the thoughts represented in that film that were coming up about my family and my personal situation at the time, it gave me a chance to work through some things as I was just thinking of pulling weeds. And that's basically the gist of the story. And the heart of it is sort of the things that I was actually dealing with at the time and having to work out. So that was a fun film to do.
Your character had some really intense thoughts there. That was I don't want to give it away for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but that was especially when you had those try not to give it away here. You had two gentlemen walk by in the backyard, and you kind of had like a little flashback of what happened but didn't happen.
Well, yeah, I had a fear fantasy.
Fear fantasy.
Basically, kind of the context of that is that my character and me sometimes watches too much television, too much TV news, and I think TV news, implants in our brain kind of a fear mentality about our community, as opposed to giving us news we can actually use to have a better community. So if you see somebody walking up an alley, you immediately think the worst of them, and that was really what was depicted there. Is that I imagined what was going to happen to me. And then it doesn't quite happen that way, and there's a lesson to be learned there somewhere, I hope. But that was part of it. And then the other images that come up are sort of related to my relationship with my father, my relationship to my ex-partner, and who has a kid that I'm trying to reconnect with, and all those things. It's just a slice of life, really, but it was all kind of compressed into that afternoon of unexpected hard work.
Yeah, those were some gigantic weeds in your backyard. Those things were taller than you. But
yeah, and we had to let them grow that way. That was about 2 years after that had actually happened. And Tim and Enninger, who's my photographer, said, well, when can we start? And I said, well, we need to wait for the beginning of monsoon season so that the rains come and the weeds go high. And I had to purposefully ignore them for, like 2 months before we could start shooting. And it was hard to pull all those weeds. But anyway, we're giving a little bit too much of it away. It's only a 33-minute film. But give it a try and see what you think and see what comes up for you.
Yeah, definitely. You guys go check that out. And with that film, I like how you touched on the fact that if you let your thoughts wander, a lot of times you'll project something onto somebody else that isn't really even necessarily true, without even giving that person a fair chance.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's called profiling, right? Or
right.
Stereotyping, or just giving into your own worst fear.
Yeah, but New Time Legends, that I'm excited to dive into that more. I was just scanning through it the other day, but I can't wait to dive into that more. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, there's a lot in there, and I think some people also profile films. They think a film is just about a bunch of old guys playing basketball. And first of all, the age range of this group is 26 to 72.
Oh wow!
So there's a melding of generations there. That's basically 3 generations, I would say, of people. And there's African Americans, there's Native Americans, there's Asian Americans, there's, of course, a bunch of us Caucasians too. And it really presents an opportunity and basketball is not the only way people do this. As one of our players points out, book clubs do this, and car groups do this, but there's a common thread that allows you to connect with people that you normally wouldn't connect with, and there's an understanding about that. That's one level of interest in it, I think. And then the other one is sort of the examination of the beauty of the game of basketball. We have a chapter called The Zen of Basketball, where the guys are talking about how they love the strategy and how they love the collaboration part of the game, and how they get to know somebody. So one guy said, you learn so much more about watching how someone plays this game of basketball than you would ever learn from them, even if you had lunch with them once a week, because there's something visceral about how they team play or how they react to adversity or whatever that is, So I think it's a real workshop, and I just wanted to dive deep into that. So it's great for sports fans, I would say, but I think it's great for anybody who could see the commonality between this type of experience and any shared experience that allows people to find, first of all, what's similar about us before they start to think about what's different about us. And then the other key element, I think, is that we lost, in the 17 years I've been playing with them, we lost 2 players to rather violent, unexpected deaths. And when that happens, boy, that really shakes you to the core. A gathering that seems kind of routine or just something that you do, all of a sudden you look around and say, hey, you may not be here the next time I show up to play.
Right.
And it just makes you really want to appreciate that present opportunity. And I think one thing about shaping trailers is that in indie filmmaking, the trailer is maybe the only chance you're going to get people's attention, because there's so many options right out there now, and so it's hard to get people to spend time with independent film that's not at the level that they're expecting from Netflix and Amazon and all that. So it's worth it to put enough into the trailer to give them a sense of all these things, and I think we were able to do that for this entry into the High Desert Screening Competition.
I really like the subject that you were diving into with this one. It's because you're, like you're saying, just competing against somebody and being there with them through those games, you really develop a bond of friendship, and you really get to know somebody. Like you're saying, competing against them or playing with them, that becomes family after a while. And then, like you said, one day they might not be there, and it's, you could really almost kind of kick yourself in the rear end for not getting to know somebody better, and definitely bonding with somebody as opposed to stereotyping them or just projecting your own thoughts on them.
Yeah, well, that's really good, Jesse. And the other thing that's interesting, though, is that we're not cordoned off into set teams.
Right. So,
you might get ticked off at somebody that you're playing against, but in the next game they might be on your team, because you shoot free throws to see who's on the next team if you lose. And then the next time you show up, we start with the first 10 players, and somebody just tries to pick players, pick the matchups, right?
Right.
So, that's another thing. They talk about road rage, right? And that, we're in our little bubbles, and we can, curse and make hand gestures and get really angry at somebody because we don't know them. We're never going to see them again, right?
Right.
And even in a typical pickup basketball game, and you kind of compare what we're doing to what you might walk by on a playground where there's a lot of arguing and fighting and that sort of thing. You can't play that game. You can't play that rough and mean a game, because in 10 minutes, that guy's going to be on your team, and they're a teammate, and you've got to collaborate with that person. So you've got to balance all the emotions that are going on in some sort of mid-ground with all that in mind. And that's a real good life lesson, right? Because you just never know. So
yeah,
I love that about it.
Yeah, there's no real reason to actually be angry or get mad at someone. It's
I don't know if I'd go that far, Jesse, but because I was telling I played yesterday, and there was a fellow who I thought clearly fouled me. I called a foul on him, and he said, "Oh, I didn't foul you." And I said, "Well, honor the call." There was like 90 seconds when I was ticked off at him, and we were kind of sparring a little bit, not with fists but verbally.
Right.
And and so at the end of the day, I went out of my way, to bump fists with him and to have some nice exchanges with him, because I knew, 2 days later we're going to be on the same team or something, and there's no point to it. So, I think that's sort of picking your point a little too carefully, but I think there are reasons to get angry. But then what do you do with that anger, right? Do you fester on it? Do you really escalate it? Or do you say, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? And you can sit down with your therapist and talk about that. But, is it your big brother? It's not this guy. It's your big brother that you were competing against, maybe, or something like that. But there's more to it. And the more I think we can get into the depth of it and get ourselves on the outside of the raw emotion of it, which I think this whole movie invites people to do, then I think there's a growth opportunity from it. And that's what I was really trying to get at. I think the trailer gets at it, I know the movie gets at it. We've been really lucky. We've entered it in a bunch of festivals, and about half of the festivals we've entered it in so far have picked it up as an entry. So I'm pleased that people are kind of getting that.
Oh, good. That's awesome. I love that you did that, and I love that you dove into that topic. That's,
Thanks, man.
I've discovered that a lot of times that's somebody that's maybe yelling at you or angry at you. It's not even you they're angry with. It's usually the last person or the last argument that they had that maybe they feel that they didn't win or that they were wronged or something, and that somehow they're taking it out on you. So we're really got to be cognizant of how we're treating each other.
That's true. One of the guys said, because we do have a chapter in there about pet peeves, where the guys get to talk about the things that do tick them off.
Right.
And, there's about a 10-minute section in the movie. And I think Mark Harrell, one of my friends, said, there are some people who approach this thing differently, and their need to be right outweighs the camaraderie that is possible by them letting go of something.
Exactly.
And so obviously, and you can watch that, and if you came to watch our games, you'd be able to pick out quickly who has the need to be right a little bit more than somebody else, because that somebody else, generally, if there's a dispute, just blows it off and said, let's play, ball's in, let's go. Okay, whatever you say, we're losing time because it's a limited amount of time that we have to spend together. I mean, not only in the session, but in the grand scheme, as we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many layers to it, and I know I couldn't get to all of them in the film. The first version of the film was 3 hours, 15 minutes long, but you can't ever leave it at that generally. So I would like to mention one more thing, if I could.
Sure.
I know we've kind of gone over time here, but there is an overtime chapter for the film itself. The film itself is 90 minutes, and it'll be available, after the festival season, either on Vimeo or on YouTube or somewhere. But my original idea was to not only film a documentary about it, but to also create, if you've seen documentaries on spelling bees or any kind of competitive story, generally there's a culminating competition or a big finish, I call it. And so I didn't know what the big finish could be with this. I mulled over the possibility of having our guys play the Albuquerque Journal basketball team, or, to play the Lobos or the Lobo cheerleaders or somebody in front of an audience, but that was untenable. So what I came to is that I know this from my own head, is that the dreamscape of every noontime legend is that the shots that they make are going to make ESPN's top 10 plays at the end of the day. That somebody's going to care that they had a game-winning shot or that they made a great shot. And so I started my broadcasting career. Mostly I'm a radio professional for 45 years. I started in sportscasting, so I made good friends who are now high-quality sportscasters. And I talked a couple of them into coming out here to UNM after we'd done all the filming and assembled footage to to do play-by-play calls and highlight calls of the Noontime Legends. So there's this whole chapter, and it's up on YouTube for free. If you put in Noontime Legends Overtime, I guess you would find it on YouTube. It's kind of best to watch the documentary first, but that chapter is is what it would be like if there was an NTL TV, and
Okay.
it's pretty fun. It's pretty clever. I was happy with it, and so grateful that my two sportscasting friends, would participate in this weird thing that I was proposing, but they came through for me. So there's that fun is depicted in it as well. So I hope people look for that too.
Well, Paul, before we go, is there any other future projects or social media sites you got going on you want to shout out so people can find you at?
Well, the Weeds in Our Own Backyards and The Soldier's Passage and Noontime Legends, all three, I believe, have Facebook pages. Again, the best place to kind of sample that stuff is really the one-stop shopping places, paulingles.com, where you can watch all that stuff. So no, there wouldn't be anything much more than that, really. If you join us, if you like those pages on Facebook, if we have screenings, we are going to be screened. Noontime Legends will screen the film itself at the Minefield Film Festival at the Guild in August. I want to say August 24th, but you have to go online to see. I know it's at 4:30 in the afternoon, but you have to double check the date. Again, Minefield Film Festival. You can come in and see the film. You'll be among the first to be able to see it because that's the first screening in Albuquerque. So yeah, so that's Facebook is the way to keep up with it, and just appreciate your interest in High Desert Screening for giving us a little screen time at their event.
Oh yeah, Paul, congratulations on your entry, and thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate your time. And are you going to be there tomorrow?
I will not be able to be there.
Okay.
It's a long story. Tim Nenninger, our photographer, is going to be there to rep. So he'll be there for sure, and I will miss this opportunity this time. But my thoughts will be with everybody there having a good time.
Okay, well, Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And since I won't get to see you tomorrow, it was great meeting you and talking to you. And congratulations on everything. And I love what I've seen so far. So just keep going. I love it.
Okay, I appreciate meeting you this way. I hope we'll do it face-to-face before too long.
Hopefully someday, yeah, face-to-face.
Yeah, I think we can manage that. We'll work it out.
We'll work it out. All righty, sir. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, thanks.